Hello, Áine. Áine, how are you today? Áine
I'm
Greaney.
well, thanks, Beverly. How are you on this cold New England night?
Very good, thank you. Very good. And I'm thrilled to be talking with you. So enjoyed the class I took with you at the 603 convention. And this is even more exciting that we're talking one-on-one. And we are going to talk about your book that I happen to love, Writer with a Day Job. I don't know if you can see it or not, but
I can see it,
I
Beverly.
it I found it to be so informative. And if when we get together, I'll show you my notes as I wrote through the book about, oh, this is what I need to do, and oh, this is what I know I can do. And it was really helpful, and I'm grateful. And I think there's a hunger out there for the understanding about writing and publishing, and that's what I'm focusing on. So I wanted to start first, though, if you would give us a bit of your bio. How did you get started, and what's your day job like?
Oh, okay. Well, it feels to me almost like I've been writing forever. I think I started when I was about 14. I was a teenager, unhappy teenager. Um, Went to a convent school, lived out the country, so there was the school bus thing. And I'm a natural dyed-in-the-wool introvert, so the whole school bus group thing it
It's a
didn't work
nightmare,
anymore.
right?
It's a nightmare,
It's a
yeah.
nightmare.
For a kid like that, it's a nightmare. And I've always been a reader, I'd always been a reader. And I don't know how I realized this, but I can remember it vividly, Beverly. I can remember sitting inside my bedroom window, studying for exams, and just finding a notebook and realizing that most evenings, the only way I could kind of get through the studying and the pressure. I'm from Ireland originally, and the Irish system of education is fairly rigorous, um, very rote learning kind of rigorous, So, and you take these state exams. So every student in the country takes the same exam,
Mm.
unless, you opt out. But so anyway, yeah, there I was with my little pen and my notebook, and I just sort of realized that I felt better. I got a lot of stuff off my chest, and then I would turn to the history and the geography and
Right, right.
the math textbook, my enemy. Um, and then I did the same thing in college. That adjustment to college is just so hard, especially if you're from a rural place and you suddenly landed in college in the city. And I was young. I went to college very young. They didn't take you till you were 17, and I made it by 12 hours.
Wow, wow.
Yeah,
Just
I had my
right after your
birthday
birthday?
right after, the day before, in fact.
Hmm.
Um, and I would write on and off, you know, throughout kind of different episodes in my life. And then I came here to the United States in the very end of 1986. And again, a big adjustment period, a big kind of head spinning adjustment. And I remember vividly, I moved to upstate New York, and I remember being do you remember Woolworths?
Right. Yes.
I
Yes, I
remember
do.
being in a Woolworths.
At the counter?
Many people nowadays look at you like, what?
Yeah.
But
Who?
I was in a Woolworths, and I'm buying my notebook and my cheap pen, and I had a job as a waitress, and I'd go home at night, and I probably still stank of French fries and spaghetti sauce or whatever, and beer. And I would just, that was my release, was to sit down and kind of write. In terms of sending, kind of writing for a readership versus just um, expressive writing for myself, um, the waitressing and the patching together all the jobs got very
Mhm.
old as I got old. As I got old, it got old. So I went back to grad school here. I went to a graduate program for English and writing. And I really, I began to see how it all came together. That, all the writing I'd been doing all those years, and then kind of that you could learn how to write a particular form. In my case, I started out with the short story, which I had been reading for years and years and years anyway, as a
Mhm.
teenager, So I started out as a short story. I got accepted to a fellowship at the State University of New York. It was I think at the time I know it was cold out, very cold out. That was in short fiction, which I was thrilled. And then it kind of took off from there. I stayed with short fiction for a long time and then veered over into creative nonfiction or short essays, personal essays, first person writing. And I keep going back and forth between the two, nonfiction and fiction. And then in terms of the writer with the day job, I had lost my job. It was, remember the last recession, 2008?
Yes, I do.
Bleak times. And, I did the impossible. I actually got a job during, I lost a job and I got a job during the recession at the height of it, in fact. And I was back working full time in an office on the 8th floor. And I thought there's got to be hundreds of other people like me just scrambling to write when
Yes.
when you're tired, very, very, very tired, coming home from work at night. And I remember clearly I had $36 in the bank. So that job came just in the nick of time.
Yeah, yeah.
And
A
I
lot of
remember
people
just
go
yeah,
through that.
yeah. And I remember being out back of this big office building and kind of scribbling down what became the first chapter of the book. That no matter how many hours I'm working here, no matter how tired I am, I'm not giving up. And I'm going to find a way to soldier through.
Yeah.
And I pitched that book, and the pitch was accepted, and then I had a certain amount of time to write it. So I've been writing ever since.
It's funny, it's informative, the teacher in you comes out in it, but in a fun way. And, I'll cover some of the things I have written. Well, we'll start with this one. Your line is, to pee or not to pee, that's not the only question. And you're referring to publishing. And so that's where you start, to publish or not to publish. And where do you land on this?
I learn a lot. I teach a lot, as you said, and my students teach me. Don't tell them that, because they think it's going to be the reverse. But I've had many students. I can think of one woman down in Cape Cod in particular who I was talking about publishing, and she didn't interrupt me rudely, but she said, "Look, I'm writing so that I leave something for my grandchildren. That's it. That's my goal. That's it. That is my singular goal, and it's a really good goal." And I remember clearly she said, "Neither my adult children nor my grandchildren really know who I am. They don't. They think of me as mom and grandma. And I want to leave something of who I am for real. My own identity." That was her goal. And this is years ago now, and I found it very inspirational what she said. And I've had several students since that who that's their goal. I've had other students who, like me, when I was sitting at that homework table, their goal is to just write to sustain themselves, to make their day a little less stressful. That's their goal. It
feeds them. Yes, yes.
It feeds them. And then I've had yet another student, who threw down his pen and said, "It's all a big fat waste of time if you don't get into the top." I was going to say the top 5 New York publishers. They're no longer top 5. You're wasting your time.
Yeah.
That was his goal, was to get into the top whatever number of New York based publishers. So I think the goal is very, very personal. It's personal to each of us who
yes,
gets on a laptop or picks up a pen.
Yes. And we've had this conversation about self-publishing versus publishing, and I'm on the side of self-publishing because I want those people to write down their stories so that their families have them. If only my aunt had it. My aunt, who was married 7 times, outlived all of her husbands, died in a fire. Just, if only she'd written things down. She just was a very colorful redheaded, character. Anyway, hers was not real though. I just want them to write their stories down and save them for us all. So, but throughout the book, you have worksheet items to follow through on. One was start the worksheet to spend time thinking about your personal writing mission. I thought that was really smart. And that goes back to what you were saying. Why am I writing? Is it for my children? Is it to feed my soul? Is it to become one of the top writers and the top published writers in the United States, which one or 2% of all books ever get there. But you encourage them to do that in the book. I just thought that that's really smart. So I have you write every day, even a little, just like working out, you say. Why should you write every day? I don't write every day, but I think about writing and what I want to accomplish or what I want to write or accomplish. That's what I think about writing, that I don't write every day, but it is important to at least dwell upon it at some point in time throughout the day. And are you always dwelling on writing if you're not writing?
Yeah, very much so.
Always, right?
Yeah, I journal. I still journal. I've never lost that habit. And sometimes I journal about my personal life or whatever. But sometimes I journal about the writing.
Mm.
I say, how can you fix this? What's stalling you here? Why are you so mad at this piece? And I even, I even I've dreamt solutions to a writing piece. That's happened to me very often.
I believe you.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I'm working at the moment. I'm just finishing up a collection of short stories. I'm just putting the final spit polish. And I had one or two of them. A lot of them I had written before, about half of them I had published before, but I found that when I went into the published ones, I had one character with a flip phone. And I found that the flip phone kind of stood between the reader and the story because literally a what?
It sets you in a time.
It sets you
takes,
in a time, but
yeah.
it wasn't really a historic story, Um, and it just didn't fit. Like it didn't work that well. But I don't think it was that particular story, but there was one story that I found difficult to write on many levels. And I woke up a couple of mornings saying, that's it. That's what
That's it.
this character does. No
I got
problem.
it.
You know.
I love that. I love that time when the character speaks to you. You're writing and then all of a sudden they're talking to you in one way. It's that still small voice that we hear that gives you a solution. You also wrote, clear your throat before you can sing. Please explain is what I put down. What did clear your throat before you can sing? What's that mean?
Well, I think for many of us, you're not going to get to the brilliant stuff on the first
Brilliant? No.
paragraph
Yeah.
or the first page. And so, maybe the first few lines of what one writes, whatever purpose it is, journaling, memoir, whatever, you kind of have to allow yourself to kind of clear out what's kind of bumbling around in your mind until you get to the rich stuff. And there's a kind of an aha, this is actually what I wanted to write about. With my students, often when they kind of make a face at me, but, start out with just the day, what's out your window. Today I am is a nice way to start. Today I am eating a bowl of cereal. Today I'm really annoyed. Today I'm happy, whatever. Today I'm watching the sun, come up over the trees, whatever. And that's the kind of clearing the throat thing. Like,
Oh, I like that.
just to get the pen moving or the keyboard moving. And there's a kind of a cognitive process as well. You're letting yourself get there. and today I am, and then you kind of get to this is why and what I wanted to write today for sure, even though so it's not that you wrote the wrong thing by describing the sun coming up behind the trees, but it's the way to clear the throat so that you can get to the good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So when you were a young girl and you're reading these short stories, did you say to yourself at that time, I can do this. This is something I can do. This is something I want to do. Did it draw you in even at that time?
I longed to do it, Beverly. Like I didn't think I could do it, but I loved it. Like when I say I loved it, I literally was one of those kids who sat in the bathroom with the door locked so that I could read longer. Because back in my day, you had to help out around the house. You had to help, remember?
Yes,
And
yes.
we grew up on a farm as well, so there was always some annoying chore. So the bathroom was great. But I longed to do it. Yeah, I really thought that would be way beyond kind of the possibility of
Right,
what my
right.
life would be. But I would have, I really would have loved to have done it.
I went to my 50th anniversary a couple of years ago. There's my age, right? And a classmate of mine said to me that she remembers me saying to her when we were in school that, oh, I said, I'm gonna grow up and be a writer, which I
Yeah.
have no recollection, but I thought, oh, she remembered it though. She did. So
Wow.
these feelings, these images that we get as young people, or sitting in the bathroom reading, or hiding from chores, or um, uh, let's see. On chapter 8, you've got drive time, thinking out loud on the road. I used to work in Boston. I had to drive down to Boston for 11 years. And, the traffic is terrible. And I think I've wrote 2 full books in
Wow.
traffic that they're sitting in my closet, but they never went anywhere, but I wrote them. So where do you find time to escape to think about these things? Is it through driving or just sitting alone?
Well, I don't commute anymore. I have a home office. This is it behind
I
me.
can see that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I work for a hospital in healthcare communications. That's my day job, which I've
Hmm.
had for, oh, I don't know, 24 years now.
Hospital communication, so you do all
Yeah.
of the writing, the corporate writing
Uh,
and marketing?
that's what I used to do. I used to do everything, like internal communications, external writing, everything. In this particular job, which I've had for 2.5 years, because I downsized to part time so that I could continue with the teaching.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I do their digital newsletter, I do their social media, update the website, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I love it. And I think healthcare is a nice fit for me. It's always been a very good fit for me.
Hmm.
Um, but so I walk every morning and I kind of puzzle out a lot of the writing while walking, a lot of it. It's, and I'm kind of used to it now because I kind of get going, and I have the gloves and the hat and I get going and I'm like, all right, which story do you need to fix today? Kind of
Yes.
thing. Or if it's a personal essay, like, what are you really writing about here? Are you writing for the market or like, because I'm very hard on myself when it comes to personal essays. I will not write, uh, you know, kind of to the market or to kind of get a byline. I refuse to do that. So by walking, before work, before my day job, I often challenge myself, like, is this what your personal essay is really about? And could you make it better? And why are you stuck in it? And, I literally walk and tease it out and think about it. Um, that's the main way that I do it. I'll tell you, this has been recorded, right? I had to have an
Yes.
MRI. I have a frozen shoulder. I had to have an MRI last summer, and I'm petrified of tight places, as most people are.
Hmm.
But the way I got through my MRI was one of my short stories that I'm working on. I sat there playing the story in my head and looking for the plot defects. And you know what? I've never had a better MRI in my life. It was a great way to calm myself down.
You were thinking about the story inside the tube
Correct.
and even writing it, coming up with lines and dialogue and
And picturing the scenes and saying, you know, is it staged correctly? You know, is she standing by the kitchen counter, meaning she being a character, and he comes in the door? So then where's the stove? Where's the cabinet for the coffee mugs? Because he reaches up to make coffee. And meanwhile, you know that awful noise those things make, the MRI machine.
And they're noisy too. I've never had one, but they're noisy, aren't they?
They're awful. And I was in an open MRI because I refused to do a closed one, but it was a great way to do it, Beverly, because next thing you know, they were wheeling me out and saying, "You're all set."
Well, but when you do that, when I think about my writing, I'll lay in bed. I can't sleep. I don't know what woman can. I don't know if you can possibly, but I'm up all night or up at 3 o'clock, fall asleep, back asleep, awake at 4 o'clock, you know. And I'm working on this next project that, for 2024 or 2025. And I just think about it, and I think about the scenes and this is where she's walking and what she's dressed in and what her dress looks like, and just covering all those details.
Right.
And I love doing it. I don't know if it's crazy or not. Do you think it's crazy?
I don't know. Like, I get up and I think of a word. I'm like, that isn't the verb you should use there. You should use XYZ. And I have a notebook and a pen because that verb is usually the right one, you know, when I wake up like that in the middle of the night.
So you tell yourself.
Yeah. Take that verb out. It's a weak verb, put in a stronger verb.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Yeah. You're even as the teacher, you're acting as the teacher to yourself as well.
Yeah, like, and it's really hard to kind of describe this, but I like to sometimes create an echo effect in the work. And a verb is often a good way to do that. You know, if you're working up to some violence in the story, and I don't mean, you know, smash, grab, bang violence, but if there's, you know, there's some real conflict between two characters. I like some of the verbs to kind of echo or kind of, you know, forecast that in the reader's mind. I love when I read that myself in you know, in another writer. I like where the language has had a lot of attention, you know, a lot of attention. But yeah, the middle of the night is bad for us to be up roaming around. But
I found with this book in particular, it's one I'll go back to because I looked at it as the friendly editor that you need to be reminded about what you should look for when you're going through your first or your second version. And I said, I wrote down my note here. I said it felt like having an editor in your hands, and that you create memorable characters and you tell them how to do it also. So you can look at one of your characters and then you can look on this through this one chapter and say, well, but have you done this? And have you looked at that? Was that part of the purpose, to help learn how to edit your own work as you wrote this?
Well, I think for writers with a day job, and I don't want to sort of divide writers into those with a day job and without one, but one of the things about balancing a day job, and I'm just recently part-time, so most of my life I've been full-time, sometimes full-time and another side hustle.
But don't you love being part-time?
Oh, I absolutely adore it.
I know I do
too. I love it.
I love it.
We don't always have the luxury of being in a writer's group where you bring a manuscript and people read it ahead of time for you and give you peer feedback. I found that I just couldn't do that. Again, an introvert, and I had already been in an office all day making small talk, the dreaded small talk, sitting in meetings in the boardroom, and I didn't have the physical or mental energy to go then and be in a weekly or a monthly writers group. Now I know it works really well for a lot of people. I just didn't have the time or the energy for it.
No, it's really one of the topics I wanted to get into also. I have never been able to join a writers group.
Really?
I don't want to read my stuff to other people anyway until I'm ready for other people to read it.
Well, there's a reciprocal nature to it as well, as you know. So you're not paying, a beta reader. So there's a reciprocal nature. And if you're working, or if you're deeply into your own manuscript, so much so that you're up at night thinking about it, it's kind of just, you owe the other person in the writers group a lot of attention to their work, because
yes,
it's a reciprocal process. And if you physically don't have the time in your day, or you don't have the emotional or mental energy for it, then a writers group is hard.
yeah. I'm sure it's for those who want that camaraderie kind of an aspect, that they're not alone, that if they're struggling or if they're just enjoying it, but that a writers group does that for them. And you have, and I really, again, I've never joined one, but it's never been part of what I've wanted to do though. So
I think the writers group, and I think I say this in the book, that if you're clear about the goal, again, it goes back to goals and mission. If it's social and it's bring a dish,
yeah,
potluck, and
yeah,
like you say, you talk shop and you commiserate and you chat with other writers, I think that
yes,
is very enjoyable. If
yes,
you've the time and the physical or mental space for it. But if the writers group is about beta reading and giving people feedback so that their manuscript improves, you better have time in your day for that. That's quite a commitment.
that is,
It's quite a commitment, and there has to be a fairness to it, that if writer A's manuscript is 5 pages, then you better be ready to read writer B's 5 pages
yeah,
as well.
yeah,
You can't sort of short change anybody.
yeah. It's got to be a fair situation. How do you think dialogue moves a story forward? And do you think description slows down the momentum of the action, or where are you with dialogue versus description?
I think it depends on the work, Beverly. It really does, and the kind of tone of work. I mean, if you think of some authors, their work is very ponderous. It was the best of times and it was the worst of times. And,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that's the tone, and that's kind of the speed of the work, and it's moving at that pace, and that's the intention.
Those are the ones I skim.
But whereas with a thriller or a mystery, while there is description and there's lots of dialogue sometimes, you don't have as much of that kind of description. But definitely dialogue, I think where I skim and lose interest is where the dialogue is just in there for the sake of dialogue, and it's not telling me more about the person, either in nonfiction as an essayist or a memoirist, and it's not moving the plot of the memoir forward. And it's just there because you feel like, oh, these two people are in a room, they better get chatting. Well, it's not it's
But
not like it's not like the hairdressers. You don't have to talk.
but you say, I thought you said in it something like, it doesn't have to sound like two people talking, or something along that line. We're having a dialogue.
Right.
And if I were writing this, I would write it verbatim because it's a question and answer kind of a situation. But that's not necessarily how a novel should be or a short story's dialogue should be.
It's very contrived.
Contrived.
Yeah. So you would take, like, I love to eavesdrop. That's why I love coffee shops. Love it. love buses, love trains. That's the benefit of them. But you're not going to take that, what you overheard in the coffee shop or what your mother said to you in Christmas of 1972. You're not going to take it verbatim. You're going to kind of mush it through your mind, you know, write it out by hand or mess around with it a little bit. And what gets onto the page is a fairly contrived piece, and you've edited it and cleaned it up several times, maybe recorded yourself reading it even, so that it's tight, like it's very tight, and it represents what your mother said at Christmas in 1972, but it's not like taping her, you know, it's not, it's in there to match the pace and the tone and the plot of the work, you know. So it's, dialogue's hard work. It's, you know.
But I love writing dialogue. I love it. I've written it to a point that, you know, if it's sad, that I brought myself to tears even on occasion.
Wow.
That it's, and I'm not a weepy person, but you know, so it has to really, it is a part of the singing, I think also. It goes back to your singing, but your throat's fully clear and you're singing the song clearly then.
Oh yeah. Yeah, when you get to dialogue. Or I mean, I've opened a couple of stores with dialogue.
Oh.
But again, it's very loaded dialogue. It's not loaded on the page, but it's if I open with dialogue, or when I read a book or listen to an audiobook, another 3 a.m. trick to get back to sleep, by the way. You know, that if I open with dialogue, then there's a reason for that. And it's also to kind of, you know, set up the tension or tell something about the character.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you've just given me an idea. I should listen to audiobooks at 3 o'clock in the morning. Turn that on, and I don't have to use a bright light that keeps my husband up.
They really help you sleep. And then the other thing that I've found with audiobooks is they've really taught me about clarity, because I'm not always the clearest writer, I have to say.
Talk about what? I'm sorry?
About clarity in your work.
Clarity.
You know, so in terms of stage setting, with audiobooks, you're half asleep and you're listening to them and you've no printed word. So you really need to know, is the table sitting to the left of the chair or to the right of the chair?
Yes.
You know, and going back to the dialogue in an audiobook is very, you know, does the person sound angry? Do they sound snooty, sarcastic? I've learned a lot from my nocturnal audiobooks. You know, I notice in this collection of stories, I've learned how to be much clearer. And audiobooks have taught me that.
To be much more clearer?
Yeah. Like, is she standing by the kitchen table or is she in the doorway? And is her apron on or is it off?
Yeah.
As in paragraph 3, you said it was on.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, but all those details make it so interesting, though, and it brings that mental picture that I love in a book. Just that, I'm there wherever the book is. I'm seeing it in my mind.
That's the joy. Like, that's why as kids we picked up a book.
Yeah.
You wanted to go on that trip, you know.
Yeah. I interviewed this author that he wrote about a sailor that he sailed. He didn't ever use an engine, and he sailed the 7 seas in these boats that without an engine, no mechanical anything. And I mean, you were there, and this guy was something else. He was married 7 times. 2 wives died. It was high seas, and but it was such a good book anyway. But I thought this was really cool what you wrote. Make them move and talk and twitch all at the same time. So, you know, and when I was in Toastmasters, and you're supposed to gesture, you're supposed to bring your speaker, you're supposed to bring your audience into you, the speaker. And you're telling me that when you put it on the page, show that twitching, show that movement. Great advice, I thought.
And you can intersperse some of that twitching. You have to go gently with this, though.
Go gently with the twitching.
Like sometimes you can pop it into the dialogue, you know, intersperse it with the dialogue and make the twitching tell what the person's not saying, you know, because many of us have had those conversations where the bubble above your head is saying one thing, the speech bubble is saying one thing, and what's coming out of your mouth is saying, you know, something else. Sure, I'd love to come for Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sometimes you can use kind of that the physical act, you know, the twitching, the tapping the finger. I had a student one time in a class in New Hampshire, actually, and he had a couple on a date in his scene, and he had the girl kind of, you know, messing about with the straw on her cocktail, you know, the little plastic straw. She kept twirling it and twisting it. So as the reader with his scene, my student's scene, you were like, she's very nice to this date, but the straw is telling everything.
Yeah, that's saying something else. Yeah, there's something that's a great way of showing it too. The spinning of the straw. Very good.
Yeah, I thought he did a super job, and it never left. As you can see, this was a long, long time ago, and it never left my mind
Yeah.
because as the reader, you're like, there's never going to be a second date. There just isn't.
So clever, so clever. Just those lines that stay with you. I love it, love it. So what is the difference between drafting and editing?
I think drafting for me, like everybody has their own approach and method. I read someplace one time that there's, I think it was, I'm forgetting, it's a female author. She's, anyway, some female author of whom I'm really envious wrote, or she said in an interview that she drafts it so much in her mind that by the time she actually types or handwrites, it's done. That's it. I am envious, very envious. I think with the drafting, though, you have to let loose. You have to be willing to kind of just let it go. And you know you're overwriting. You know you're writing way too much. You may even change what the story is about. Maybe the last paragraph is what the story is actually about, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. But you have to be willing to do those drafts that, you know, some you might just even, I have, my second novel is still sitting in my laptop. You know, like you have to be willing to sort of put it down there in a draft. In terms of editing, you've decided, okay, at least this is what I want the story to be about. I'm settled on that. Okay, it's going to be about this date where the woman is very, you know, doubtful about the whole thing, and she has twiddling her little straw, even though she's been very pleasant, you know. So you're going in and you're looking at it. You're going, well, I always say there's kind of a big picture architectural edit where you go in and move paragraphs. You know, this paragraph's better down here. I think I'll bring the dialogue in earlier. I call that the big kind of you know, you're changing kind of the scaffolding of the story.
Right,
you know,
right.
that's the big picture editing, and I'm sure there's a technical name for that. But and then once you've decided on the scaffolding or the bits, you know, where they go, or do they even stay, you know, you go in and you do that finer edit. You know, you go in and you say, I need a stronger verb here. Wait a minute, I need her standing on the top step of the house before the front door, not on the bottom step. You know, you're going in looking at that very finite thing. And then where I'm at now with my current manuscript, I'm doing the last copy edit, dotting I's and crossing T's. You know, boo-boos. Literally boo-boos.
Do you want to use any kind of software?
I just use, I'm very old-fashioned. I print it up and I go through it. But I also, for the final, I in Word, in Microsoft Word, there's that oral review, and you have the computer kind of read it to you.
Oh, yes, I love
Yeah,
that.
I love that. And it's
I
a really
love it. Yes.
boring voice, like he has a
But I
boring.
changed the voice to the woman. I've gone with the man.
Oh, you can do that,
Oh,
Beverly?
yeah, you can change the voice, and
Didn't know
oh,
that.
you catch so many
You
things.
catch so many things, and I think the duller the voice, the better, because
The duller.
you know, it makes you catch things, like you say. You catch. I didn't know you can change it though.
Yeah,
Oh,
but I'm with you. I'll even, you get these emails that are this long and, yeah, why are we doing it? Why are we saying so much about something? I'll just copy it into a Word document and have it
oh,
read to me. And
perfect.
I can be doing other things while it's happening. I
That's a
love it.
great idea.
Great.
The other thing I've done is, I'll tape myself. I have a little app on my phone, and I'll read it aloud, tape myself, and then on my walk, I have my little earbuds in, and I'm listening for boo-boos. I'm
Yeah, yeah,
listening
yeah.
for,
Yeah. You
you
don't
know,
use Grammarly or any kind of, you're doing it all yourself. You're catching all your commas all by yourself.
I know it's a bit risky, but I think I do it for work so much that
Oh,
the
yeah,
stage is kind of, second
yeah.
nature. But
How
you're
far do
right.
you walk?
You're right. The reading out loud is just, it's so valuable.
Oh, it's so valuable. Oh my
Yeah.
God. Yeah.
And you catch things like, wait a minute, you started a paragraph with that word 3 paragraphs ago,
Yeah.
or you're repeating yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really, when you're listening to somebody that is droning on, again, I go back to Toastmasters, the crutch words so and oh, I
Yeah.
watch the news and I could pull my hair out the number of times somebody says that's being interviewed. Gods, it's an awful thing. And if they heard that, I hope they go back and listen to what they were saying to improve their performance. All right, so how many times do you edit a book? Do you have like a first time, second time? How many times or at what point in time do you know I have gone through this enough and it's over? Do you have a certain number that you have in your mind on that?
I had an essay published in 2023, and I wrote the first version of that essay. We're in 2024 now. Well
Yeah,
over 20 years ago. Well over 20 years ago.
20 years?
Yes.
Wow.
And that's just an essay. And the one that got published, final version, if you will, is much shorter, for starters. Much shorter. And much kind of clearer, much more in a journalistic style than in a deep contemplative style. So that would be kind of on the far end of the long edit.
That's a long way.
That's a long way. I wouldn't edit it every day, but I would have it in my files. And I did send it out for a beta read and took some of those edits on board. But, I paid a beta reader whom I trust. On the shorter end, I have a hard time letting go. Like I want it perfect.
I
And
know.
even long after it's
Yeah.
published, I mean, these short stories that I'm putting in a collection, about 60% of them are published. And I read them published, byline, whole, and I just, look what you missed.
Yeah. I know that feeling. Yes.
10 years ago, look what you missed. How
Oh,
could you miss that?
yeah, yeah,
Dang it, you used the wrong verb then.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I edit a lot, but sometimes as well, you don't have that luxury. As you well know, you're a journalist. You don't have that
No, sometimes
luxury.
you just got to get it out.
You just have to get it out. And I had a professor in Albany, New York, and her great advice was a good paper is a done paper.
Is a done paper?
Yep.
Okay.
And I've never forgotten her advice. Sometimes you just have to get it out, like you say.
Sometimes you just have to move it along. Yeah.
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 You just have to get it out and hope that you haven't, hope that the editor on the other end, the acquiring editor, will point out to you where you need to.
Do you hire editors to read your work?
No.
Never?
No.
You trust your own judgment and your own expertise.
I kind of cross my fingers and hope. I hired one for that essay that I'm talking about. I did hire one.
The 20-year-old essay?
Yes.
Okay.
I did hire somebody, and she had some great questions about it. But other than that, I don't hire. I mean, publishers will come back to me as they've come back to you, I'm sure, and they'll say, I think here you need to talk more about blah, 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 and I rarely push back. Most of the time they're right. There's a reason why they're an editor.
Yeah. I don't mind advice. I don't mind.
Oh no, I love it. I think it's a luxury, actually.
But it has to be someone who I respect their credentials.
Exactly.
It's again, that goes back to the writers group, you have all kinds. So it's not that, so yeah, I love good advice.
Yeah, I do too. And you remind me, Beverly, that fellowship I got in upstate New York. I always think of this story, and I can still laugh thinking about it. It was kind of not a historic story. It was actually in my childhood, and lived on a fairly remote farm. And it was clear from the rest of the story that this house, wasn't connected, didn't have a telephone, which, I didn't have a telephone. Most of my neighbors didn't have telephones. It just wasn't a thing. You didn't need one. Like, why would you need one? But I can still laugh thinking about this. Again, you put the work out and it comes back to the group, and this particular person, on this remote farm, there's suddenly a knock on the front door, which would have been rare because you don't get visitors, you don't socialize, you don't get people stopping by because there's nobody to stop by, frankly.
Well, and there's just too much work to be done. It's a farm.
Well, I remember she wrote in the margins, you should always call before visiting a house first. How rude.
Although it may be true, though, it's
true.
But there were no phones, you said,
There were
right?
no phones. It's like a kind of historic essay, and also like the cultural mismatch. In Ireland, actually, you don't call ahead, and it would be rude to sort of say, "Oh, I can't see you right now," But apart from the cultural mismatch, I remember sitting, I took home all the drafts that I got back from people eager to see how I could fix this story. And I remember that one clearly because I thought, did she miss, the house and how it was and its lack of connection digitally, electronically?
It's rural, right?
Really rural.
Oh.
I always think of that.
Sounds like a city girl versus a country girl.
Oh, yes. I can still laugh when I think about that because it was just what you're talking about, Bev. It's like, is the person qualified to read the work?
Yeah, right.
And they don't necessarily have to have a PhD or a Pulitzer, but they need to be able to make the leap from their world into the world of the book or the world of the.
There's lots of ways to determine qualification, and you're right, it's not a PhD. It could be, but it could just be the total respect that you find with being with that person. I was wondering if you would explain, take a walk or feed the canary. It's a line from your book.
I think I wrote that about, getting distance from your work.
Getting what?
Distance, spatial and editorial distance, and also not beating yourself up. I've had students who just are very hard on themselves.
Mm.
And they sit there saying, oh, I can't finish this piece. It's, why can't I finish it? It's not coming together. The story won't move. Give yourself a break,
Yeah,
feed
yeah.
the canary, go for a walk, do something
If you
that's
have a
enjoyable.
canary, right.
If you have a canary,
Yeah. Feed that bird. Yeah.
cat, dog, um,
Yeah, get away from it for a
get
while.
away. You have to.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Did you ever notice if you do a draft like on a Friday? This applies to my day job as well. I've made myself a rule now. Write it in the afternoon, leave it,
Mhm.
especially on a Friday, because by the time you come back to it on Monday, or if I'm creating a graphic, a digital graphic, do not put that graphic out there on a Friday or put it out for review. Wait till Monday, and
Yes,
suddenly you see, what's not lined up with what,
yes,
and you could have a much better headline than this, blah,
yes,
blah, blah, etc.
yes, I agree. I look at that, Gone with the Wind, right? And Scarlett says, well, I'm going to do that in the morning. And that's what I say to myself, Scarlett, it's time to close up the Word document and come back to it at another time. So, yeah.
I mean, don't you know, see how, like, you're so much sharper when you come back and look at it
Yeah. Oh,
instead.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so much
Or what
sharper.
was I thinking even? All right, so we talked about writers groups. Um, let's see, in conclusion, what do I have here? Writing while holding down a day job. It's right there on the candy wrapper. Would you explain what's on the candy wrapper? And it's a Twix bar candy wrapper too, I believe.
Oh, I'm trying to remember that part, Beverly.
Oh, you didn't know I was
I
going to
think
grill you
I
on this, Anya.
I think I was talking about, I was finishing the book. I was under contract and I was finishing the book, and I think it was around Halloween, if I recall.
Mm,
And how, you're not going to eat a whole bag of leftover trick or treat candy.
hopefully not, but
Hopefully not. And mind you, give it my best effort. But um, it's like candy or a pizza. Like, you're not going to sit there and eat a whole pizza, but you can certainly eat a slice at a time. Um, and even with this audio edit that I'm doing now, sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm tired, and I only have a half an hour anyway because I have to be someplace. But I remind myself a half an hour is a half an hour,
mhm.
and it's a half an hour you won't have to do tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah,
So those miniature candies at Halloween, they're actually
yeah,
quite easy to eat.
yeah, they are.
Whereas you'd say to yourself, oh, what am I, greedy? I would never eat a big Mars bar. Me? Oh, that's greedy and so bad for you. Whereas those baby candies,
Right.
you know, so in terms of applying it to writing, I do think it's very freeing to, it's freeing and it's productive to say, I'm just going to write this little baby page in this. I'm just going to write for 10 minutes because I do have to be somewhere or I have to, do something else.
Mhm.
But 10 minutes is 10 minutes.
Yeah,
And you'd be surprised by how much you get done in 10 minutes.
yeah, yeah.
And it's 10 minutes that won't have to be done, tomorrow. So that was my concept behind the candy bar, that we can eat the baby ones galore.
Mhm.
And it's a good way of kind of kidding ourselves as well. Like, sometimes I have to kind of trick myself in my
Yes,
own procrastination.
yes, and
I
you hear about
say,
all these, like, the famous writers, they get up at 9 o'clock, they sit down at 9 o'clock, and they're there until 6 o'clock at night every day. Would be torture.
I couldn't do it. I'm
Oh, I can't
sorry.
either.
Okay,
No,
I can't do it.
no.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's just to be gentle with yourself, and it goes back to the walking as well.
Yeah,
If you can't walk that day, at least do around the little trot around the block. It's still better than not walking at all.
Yeah, yeah.
And
How
I
far
think
do you walk? How far do you walk in the morning?
I walk in the morning and I walk in the afternoon. And, you know, I find it a nice break between day job and the
Hmm.
editing and writing. I do about 8 to 10,000 steps.
Wow, wow. Well
Yeah.
done.
Not today because, you know, different things, but I aim for about that, you
Hmm.
know.
Hmm.
Because I love it. You know, I've been a walker all my life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, the trick in the summer here, though, is to not walk past the ice cream store. Well, actually, it's to walk past it, but past.
Walk past it, right?
Keep
Yeah.
past going, keep
Yes.
going.
Yes. I agree. I agree. You inspired me. You talk about the NaNoWriMo.org, and I read that and then I looked it up. It's writing in the month, 50,000 words in the month of November.
Yeah,
Write a novel in November,
yeah,
50,000 word minimum.
yeah.
And I signed up for it. I think I'm going to do that.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah,
Great.
I've got a story that, again, it's been there for a while. I've been spinning on this one for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years already. So it's time to put something down in writing on it. And that just seemed the right thing to do. So thank you. I appreciate the inspiration on that.
Well, there's nothing like a deadline.
That's true. That's true.
Nothing like a deadline.
Okay, well, um, Anya, what do you want to tell people about your website and what your classes and how to reach you?
Oh, sure, yeah. I'm on most of the social media platforms, and then my website is just my name. It's AineGreaney.com. So it's
Mhm.
AineGreaney.com. Um, and I teach in two areas, creative writing, which is how we met.
Mhm.
And then I also teach expressive writing, and I've quite a bit of training in that, and that's a nice crossover between kind of my work in healthcare and my interest in healthcare and writing for wellness and health.
Expressive writing helps is more so for the health side.
It's for our own personal wellness, stress relief, process your day, get to know yourself, you know.
Mhm.
Um, I really enjoy it and I
Hmm.
really love it. And a little brag here, that essay, the 25-year-old essay,
Yes.
I had somebody read it. Somebody read it in the journal that it was published in, and I now have a consultancy from this reader. You know, she reached out and she said, "My hospital is looking for somebody to teach writing."
Wow.
Yeah, and this is on the
Wow.
west coast of the U.S.
Yeah.
And we've done one session already. We do our next session in February and then March, April. I was just talking to her actually yesterday. So, you know, it's a whole field, expressive writing. It goes, sometimes classes are all about the clinical studies that support the efficacy of it. Um, and, you know, I've worked with cancer recovery patients. I've worked with grief support organization. I love it.
Mm.
But I love both of them. Like I love that kind of, I feel in my twilight years, you know, that I feel like the parts of my life have come together in a
Yeah.
way, you know, that
Yeah.
kid sitting inside the window, you know, supposed to be doing her homework and accidentally discovering that writing was a lot more fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also mentally, you know, better and a recharge for a very exhausted brain. So I teach in both kind of arenas, so to speak, and there's some overlap, but not really. They're a different approach to teaching.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and then I do my, you know, the writing of course, and then the day job. So it's busy, but I love it. I can't think of any part of it that I'd give up because I really love it. You know,
Yes, I
love
understand.
being with students. I just love it.
Yeah, I'm not a teacher, but I do understand what you're saying. I love the whole idea of it, and I almost like being alone and succeeding at it, and just being, I'm only with those characters that are in my head. I'm here for hours by myself, but I'm not by myself. So.
And not at 3 o'clock in the morning either, but
No, I'm gonna try that. I'm definitely going, I love a library. I'm going to the library and check out some audio books. And
it really works. Honestly, it I don't know why, but it's the voice, the reading voice, you know, the narrator's voice. Just sometimes you're really into the book, so you're listening, but it really does help to,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and also it doesn't require the light to be turned on.
Right,
You know,
right.
Um,
Just plug
and
in the.
I've really learned a lot. Like I just going through these stories, I'm like, you're a sharper editor than you were for the last book, much sharper. And I think I credit that to audiobooks. You know,
Interesting. All right. All
yeah, you
right.
just
That's two things you've given me.
become, yeah, you kind of you just you you're harsher on yourself as a writer, but you're also quicker at finding the boo-boos, you know. And I really think audiobooks did that for me.
If it'll spark the imagination, as you say. What side is the table on? Does she have her apron on? Is it tied in a bow? It takes you there. Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, this has been so much fun, and I'm
Oh,
glad we
thank you.
finally got to do it. And I hope to
Really
see you at
enjoyed
a
it.
Writers Project event again. I don't know when
Yes,
the next
indeed.
one is, but perhaps I'll see you there as well. And I'm grateful for your time, very much so, and I thank
I
you.
really enjoyed our conversation, Beverly. It was
Thank
a
you, thank you.
great
I'll let you know when
conversation.
it's posted on In Depth New Hampshire, all right?
Wonderful. I look forward to it.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks,
Good
sweet.
night, Anya.
Bye-bye. You
Bye.
too. Night.